Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to The Takeout. Wait, what? The ceasefire is over? The memorandum of understanding null and void? Yes. And if you want emphasis on the yes part, a second round of U.S. airstrikes on Iranian targets has just been launched. Central Command has confirmed. That's new. I'm old enough to remember when the MOU was such a good deal, a path to peace, a vast improvement over the Obama nuclear deal, and a surefire solution to skyrocketing gas prices. It was only a few weeks ago. I'm sure you remember that as well. Quick refresher. This is mid-June. President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance.
I really believe it's a regime change because I find these people to be much more rational than the people that are no longer with us.
The coolest thing about the progress we've made over the last few weeks is that you see people within the Iranian system, senior leadership, even IRGC officials say, you know what? We may have some animosity, we may have some mistrust, but we recognize the way that we've done business with the United States for 47 years is a mistake. Let's try something else.
And this was Trump at the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey today.
To me, I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people.
The Strait of Hormuz, according to dispatches today, does not have a single vessel actively broadcasting its position on either the so-called Iranian or Omani routes. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean no vessels are transiting the strait. What it does mean is that danger and instability have returned. Iran struck 3 vessels yesterday, prompting that first round of U.S. airstrikes. Iran today more or less threatened to keep it all up, raising the stakes for oil markets that thought they were in the MOU clear. Oil futures traded up, inching closer to $80 a barrel. Quick reminder, when this war began, the average price of regular gas here was $2.98 per gallon. Today, $3.79 per gallon. Now, that's down, I grant you, from $4.16 a gallon a month ago, but it's still elevated and to many consumers, irritating. The president also made news today on Ukraine and Patriot missile systems and Israeli troops in Lebanon. To summarize a very hectic day at the NATO summit, we turn with confidence to Ed O'Keefe in Ankara.
Major, you got it started there for sure. Look, he began the day, the president did, quite angry at Iran, at NATO, and by the end of the day was sort of lowering the rhetoric, at least, even though the U.S. Central Command told us just a few minutes ago that they've launched new strikes along the Strait of Hormuz, just reading from their statement here, to further degrade the ability of Iran to threaten freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. The United States is holding Iran accountable for recent unjustified aggression against commercial shipping and civilian crews freely navigating a vital international waterway. But this entire blow up today, both militarily and rhetorically and diplomatically at the NATO summit, led to a spike in oil prices. And I was struck most during his marathon press conference, the third marathon exchange with reporters today, that when he got asked by a reporter point blank, are you starting over the war? He said in part, I think anything that happens is going to be over very quickly and will only make it safer, including for oil, because there had been a question about the fact that oil spiked today so quickly. So what did we see yet again today? We saw the president start the day angry, threatening to rip things up, mess with what had become the status quo, walk into a meeting with fellow NATO leaders and suddenly apparently take a much more diplomatic and relaxed tact with them. By all accounts, including his own, it was a good meeting. It was a productive one. He reiterated U.S. support for and participation in the NATO alliance. And then he walked out and said, yes, we are going to strike tonight, because he had suggested that earlier in the day when he had his first blow-up. But this isn't like the relaunch of the war. Don't worry. So what is it now? Well, that's going to depend on how Iran responds. And there have been some suggestions today by Iranian officials that for every one thing we hit, the Iranians are going to hit 2. And where are they going to hit them? They're going to hit them across the Gulf. So it's not just U.S. targets necessarily. It could be the Bahrainis again, the Kuwaitis, the Qataris, and others. And that may prompt or force the president back into a more escalated military engagement. But what we saw today was just kind of a great example of what he does, right? He says he's going to do one thing quite dramatic and unexpected. And by the end of the day, he's trying to claw it back.
And Ed, there was news the president made about Patriot missile systems and Ukraine and what he thinks will be the future disposition of Israeli troops in southern Lebanon.
Right. On the Ukraine matter, most especially notable that he's now essentially allowing Ukraine to construct Patriot missiles inside Ukraine. So they're licensing out the technology to allow them to build them there. That will obviously lead to some American defense dollars being earned, but also allow for them to be produced a lot faster by the country that needs them most of all. They had a pretty good meeting, Trump and Zelensky did, suggesting that the two of them are trying to come up with a way to meet with Putin face to face. The president at one point said that Putin had said, yes, I'd like you all to come to Moscow. And Trump said, well, I got to put myself in the mindset of Zelensky. You don't want to go to Moscow, do you? And Zelensky said, no, there's too many Ukrainian drones there, which prompted the president, reporters in the room to laugh because, of course, Ukraine has been launching so many long-range drones into Ukraine. And then in his meeting with the new Syrian leader, there were suggestions, yes, and in his engagements with Turkey, that those two countries are going to continue to somehow play a role in sorting out what to do about Lebanon and try in hopes that Israel will wind that conflict down as well, which, of course, has been a sticking point in the talks with Iran. So ultimately, look, there was a fair amount of diplomacy conducted here, save for the military attacks that are going on in the country next door, Iran, tonight.
Ed O'Keefe in Ankara, Turkey. Thank you very, very much. CBS News national security analyst Aaron MacLean joins me now. He's also host of the School of War podcast. Quickly, let's talk about the Patriot missile licensing for Ukraine. How big a development is that?
In the broad run, it's certainly a sign of a warming of relations between Trump and Zelensky personally, this administration and Ukraine more broadly. In terms of the short-term battlefield impact, I fear it's going to be pretty limited. These are complicated weapon systems. They take a while to assemble in the factories that already exist, where there are, as you know, massive shortages. So there's a lot of obstacles between the willingness to issue a license and actually building the things.
But the symbolism is important, and it suggests that the president now sees Ukraine and Zelensky as a worthy fighter against Russia in ways he might not have 2 years ago.
Another bad headline for Vladimir Putin. It's really been a bad few months for him. And on some level, that's what the president is reacting to. He likes to back winners. He doesn't like backing losers.
What do you make, and that's a dumb question, so I regret phrasing it that way, the second round of strikes today, does that fully jeopardize the memorandum of understanding and basically render the ceasefire over?
Yeah, this MOU is on life support at best. At best, the president, in one of his moments today, basically declared it dead. That may well be the case. Look, I think this second round of strikes is very significant. Why? Because we've been through so many rounds of this in the last couple months, and it has a kabuki-like quality. There's a provoking incident, usually the Iranians taking a shot at something, though not always. Then the United States responds, hits targets in Iran. Then Iran fires some missiles at the Gulf, and then it stops. And we've seen that over and over again in the last couple months. But this time, there's a new round. We're hitting back at that Iranian missile strike. So that in and of itself is escalatory. And I'm looking to see other indications that we are stepping up in an escalatory fashion.
And Ed made mention of this. Iran has threatened to retaliate. And earlier in this conflict, the way it retaliated was to take aim at infrastructure in neighboring Gulf states. That would be the thing to watch most.
I think that's right. That certainly is an available target for them. And they've already been going after shipping in the Strait, which they've long threatened to do. Targets in the Gulf, infrastructure targets in the Gulf, obviously there if they feel particularly threatened again. This has the potential to escalate substantially. Back to March, April levels, we'll have to see. I'm looking to see what kinds of targets we're striking in Iran. Are they in that maritime zone? Or are they further inland, not related to the question of the Strait of Hormuz? I'm looking to see allied participation. Are our allies in the region participating? Is the Israeli Air Force going to participate? We don't know that, but these would all be markers of escalation if we saw them.
Aaron MacLean, great stuff as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you.